When Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them, she and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. With her two daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. Then Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." Then she kissed them goodbye and wept aloud, and they said to her, "We will go back with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have more sons who will become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I'm too old to have another husband. And even if I thought there was hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters, it is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has turned against me." At this, they wept aloud again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. "Look," said Naomi, "your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her." Focusing on verse number 14. At this, they wept aloud again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. Look at somebody beside you and say, "It's never going to make sense."
It's never going to make sense.
Ladies seated in the house, look at somebody on the other side and say, "It's never going to make sense."
It's never going to make sense.
It has long been debated that people who believe in God over logic are stupid people. It's true. There are those that think that just because we believe in God that we must be ignorant. There have been many studies that have sought to prove that people who believe couldn't possibly be intelligent. Apparently, there are those who equate having faith with having no intellect. So they've studied and studied, trying to find ways to prove that believers are dumb. However, the studies have never been able to prove it. To the contrary, there are believers that are intelligent and believers that are unintelligent. And there are unbelievers that are intelligent and unbelievers that are intelligent. However, I gotta be honest, I can understand the basis for their argument. Because if we stop and try and analyze it, then I feel where they're coming from, because they got a right to be skeptical about us, because in order to believe, in order to walk by faith and not by sight, then we're required to suppress the part of the brain that does our analytical thinking. There's no place for logic. We've literally got to put what we call common sense aside in order to truly embrace our faith. The truth is, our faith doesn't make sense. I wouldn't dare stand before super intelligent people, because Greater Joy is full of intelligent people, and pretend that our faith makes sense. By definition, faith is illogical. Let's not talk about the biblical definition first. Let's look at the Webster definition, because Webster says that faith is a strong belief in God or the doctrines of religion based on spiritual apprehension rather than proof. A spiritual apprehension rather than proof. A spiritual grasp rather than proof. Meaning, I understand it in my spirit, but I can't prove it to you. Sorry, but it's never gonna make sense. You all know that in the kingdom we define faith as the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Meaning its makeup, the composition of all that I desire without ever being able to see anything in advance. That's my faith. I'm sorry for all the really righteous folks in here, but it doesn't make sense. Jonah in the belly of the fish doesn't make sense. And the parting of the Red Sea doesn't make sense. 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread feeding 5,000 doesn't make sense. And we might as well admit it this morning, it's never gonna make sense. A talking donkey doesn't make sense. And a talking serpent in the Garden of Eden doesn't make sense. A pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night doesn't make sense. It's never going to make sense. But I stand before you today as an educated woman. I hold a degree in management and organizational development. I serve in the strategy division of one of the largest organizations in the state. And on top of that, I possess a good bit of common everyday sense. And even with everything that I got up here, I still believe God. And I got enough sense to know that it doesn't make sense. It's never going to make sense. And it's not because of Noah. It's not because of Jonah. It's not because of Lazarus. It's because of my own life that I stand firm on something that absolutely makes no sense. The fact that I'm standing here today doesn't make any sense. The very breath that I'm taking right now doesn't make any sense. How God has allowed me to be blessed doesn't make sense. All the ways that God has made in my life doesn't make sense. The doors that have been opened don't make sense. Chance after chance after chance doesn't make sense. So I'm sorry if my love of God doesn't match your theories. I don't apologize for my faith, but I realize that it doesn't make sense. Here in the book of Ruth today, we get a brief glimpse of the Bible character Orpah. And after we read about her here in this one chapter, she is never mentioned again. And I totally understand where Orpah is coming from in the text. She's likely trying to make a decision based on whatever made the most sense. She's a young widow. Her husband is gone, and she's asking herself if she should go back home or should she take a chance and go with Naomi and Ruth. She had to decide what made sense. Should she stick with what she knew or try what she'd never seen? She had to decide what made sense. I don't beat up on Orpah. I get what she was working with. But if I had a chance to preach to my sister today, I simply would have told her sometimes you got to step out on faith. Sometimes you got to simply believe in the power of God, because believing in that which you have never seen is never going to make sense. Sometimes, people of God, you got to put aside the risk and go with the possibility, because it's never going to make sense. Sometimes you got to lean and depend when everything is already falling down around you, and it's never going to make sense. I would have said go with God, Orpah, because it's never going to make sense. And that's my message to the house of God today. We must trust. We must believe. We must expect. And we must have faith even though it doesn't make any sense. Let me see if I can explain why. We got to be okay with going with God when it doesn't make any sense, because we've got to accept the fact that the orchestration is too intricate for us to unravel. All right. Listen, people of God, there is no way that we could ever understand everything that God put into place to make the world go round. That's right. It's beyond our understanding. It's above our pay grade to think that we could ever demystify the omniscience or wisdom of God. Yes. Before the world as we know it began, God was weaving together intricacies that we will never be able to figure out. God was always God, and he was always putting pieces together to create his perfect divine will. We can't figure it out. We couldn't handle it if he tried to tell us. We aren't capable of comprehending all that the Lord has orchestrated on our behalf. We've got to be okay with accepting the fact that it's never going to make sense, because God's plans are too complex for human understanding. That's why I'm not mad at Orpah, Frida, because she was just like us. There was no way that she could know. There was no way that she could understand everything that God might have already lined up on her behalf. Can we just dig into the story for a moment? Before Elimelech, Mahlon, and Chilion ever died, God had already orchestrated to make Boaz rich. He was already in place to become Ruth's husband. Before the famine ever started in Moab, God had already orchestrated aid for the famine in Judah. And I believe, Rodney, that the Bible said that Naomi heard that things were better back in her homeland. So that means, Tasha, that God would have had to have orchestrated it so that somebody would tell Naomi what was happening in Judah. Imagine how many women God orchestrated for Boaz to turn away from before Ruth got there. Imagine how God orchestrated it so that they would be able to get there and find a place to stay near Boaz. Imagine how God orchestrated the timing of the deaths of the father and the son in order to get Naomi to come back home. I don't know about you, but my mind can't handle it. I can't trace it. I can't track it. It doesn't make sense to me because the orchestration is too intricate for me to go back and try to unravel. And I'll never figure it out because it doesn't make sense. And this is the practical application for my life and for your life. We're going to have to accept the fact, Sharonda, that some of the things that happen to us are never going to make sense. Because just like Orpah and Naomi and Ruth and Boaz and Elimelech and Mahlon and Chilion, God is orchestrating some things that we will never be able to unravel. There are plans for you that started many years ago. There's a path that began back with our forefathers. And we've got to grow to a place in our faith that we can handle the fact that it's never going to make sense. We're going to have to begin to choose faith over logic and be good with it not making sense. Can I preach real hard right here? Some of the stuff that we think is so terrible, Tamara, God orchestrated it.
Yeah, that's right.
I know that's rough, but the truth is a part of this faith walk. Everything that went south for you was not the enemy. Some of it, God orchestrated it. And we got to be submissive enough to deal with the fact that even though it was devastating, it was part of a larger, more intricate plan than we could ever unravel. That layoff, God orchestrated it. That breakup, God orchestrated it. That loan denial, God orchestrated it. That wasn't the enemy trying to hold you down. That was God working on his plan. Come on and help me preach this hard word to your neighbor right now. Look at him and say, I know it hurt you.
I know it hurt you.
But God orchestrated.
But God
Look at
orchestrated.
somebody on the other side and say, I know it hurt you.
I know it hurt you.
Woo! But God orchestrated.
But God
I
orchestrated.
cried when I wrote this, Kristen, but I know that it's true. God orchestrated some stuff. The pain, he orchestrated it. And the rejection, he orchestrated it. And the denial, he orchestrated it. And it broke my heart at first, Rodney, to think about the fact that some of the worst days in my life had nothing to do with anybody in a red cape and horns. It was something that God orchestrated in my life. Do I have any people in the house today to say that hurts me, Pastor Kim? To know that on that dark day, it hurts me, Pastor Kim. You can be real with God. To say, I didn't want to believe that it was my Jesus. I didn't want to believe that it was my God. But I got to tell you, because I love you, that God orchestrated it. And God told me to ask you, can you be okay if the Savior sabotaged you? Can you be okay if the pain came from your God? Can you be okay if it was Jesus that made you cry? I'm looking for some mature Christians in the house today that have to understand that the plan is too deep. It goes back too far for us to ever understand what God was orchestrating. God said, do you love me enough that you were sitting up in glory. And this was a part of your plan for me. Can I just preach the word of God to you? God said, I'm intentional. It wasn't by accident that you cried. It wasn't by accident that you lost it. It wasn't by accident that you got denied. God said, I'm intentional. Somebody look at your neighbor and say, God did it.
God did it.
And he meant it.
And he meant it.
God did it.
God did it.
And he did it on purpose.
Yeah.
It was a part of his plan. Oh, somebody can't give a hallelujah. It's hard to raise your head right there. But I need to understand that God's got a plan for my life. That I'm never going to wrap my mind around. He said, I know the plans I have for you. He didn't say you know the plan. He didn't say mama knows the plan. He said, I know the plan I have for you. So I had to wipe my tears, Minister Tasha, and I looked up towards glory. And I said, God, I thank you for your intentionality for my life. God, I give you glory that you wrote out a master plan. If I got any grown-up Christians in here, somebody look up towards glory and say, God, I thank you.
God, I thank you.
That's
it. Working out a plan.
It's never gonna make sense.
Yeah.
Because the orchestration is too intricate to unravel.
Yeah.
Secondly, we gotta be okay that it's never gonna make sense because there are no mathematical constants. One of the things that we like in life, Peanut, is for certain things to remain constant. Because we feel like if we know what's constant, then we can always figure out the answer to the equation. If x equals 2 and y equals 3 and they're constant, then we can figure out any formula that you give us containing x and y. However, the reason that our faith is never going to make sense is because God doesn't have any mathematical constants. Everything with God is subject to variability. He changes what he needs to change in order to bring about his perfect will. Where Orpah's calculation might have gotten a little off was because she assumed that she knew what she thought would remain constant, because that makes sense. But God doesn't always make sense. Let me see if I can make it plain, because a broke Ruth plus a broke Naomi, with all things remaining constant, should have equaled a life of poverty.
That's right. That's right.
But it equaled a life of wealth.
Yeah.
It didn't make sense. An old widow plus a young stranger in Judah, with all things remaining constant, should have equaled rejection and shame. But it ended in favor and belonging. It doesn't make sense. An unknown Ruth plus a wealthy and respected Boaz, with all things remaining constant, should not have equaled a match made in heaven. But it ended in a union that was part of the lineage of Jesus the Christ. It doesn't make any sense. It's never going to make any sense, because in God there are no mathematical constants. God changes variables. God jumbles formulas. God computes illogically. So we've got to understand that what should be constant might not always be constant. I think I can prove it. If we look back at where we started and where we are today, with all things remaining constant, it doesn't make any sense. If we go back and think about how far we had to go, and we add in all the hurdles we had to climb, and we multiply it by all the times we stumbled, it doesn't make any sense. Can I just tell my testimony? If I look at how I've lived and I add in how messed up my mind is, and I subtract how bad I've been to God, and then I look at how good God is to me, it doesn't make any sense. Is there anybody in the house like me that'll say, if everything remained constant, if everything with the way that it should have. How I'm actually standing here alive today doesn't make any natural born sense. Come on and shake your head at somebody beside you and say, baby, your story don't add up.
Your story don't add up.
Look at somebody that's a miracle on the other side of you and say, baby, your story don't add up.
Your story don't add up.
Look back at the same person and say, child, I know it.
Child, I know it.
But I give God the glory. Because when I look back over my life, and I look back how low I was, and I look back how much I stumbled, and I look back at how messed up I was, something about where I am today just don't make no sense. When I look back at who I've been with, and I look back at who I fought with, and I look back at who I cussed out, and I look back at who I betrayed. I'm not talking about that, I'm talking about me. When I look back at how I walked, and I look back at how I talk, the fact that I'm standing in the pulpit, it just don't make no sense. Anybody in the house like me that'll say, when I look at where I'm able to live, and I look at what I'm able to eat, and I look at what I'm able to drive, and I think back on where I came from, it just don't make no sense. It never gonna make no sense. Will you high five your neighbor and say, I'm a mathematical miracle? When you add up my past, when you look at my present, my future doesn't make any sense. I need some folks in the house today that'll say, I'm so glad that God's mad. Man's mad. Because if man had his way, I would equal up to a failure. I would equal up to disaster. Oh, but the master mathematician had a formula for my life. And he switched around some variables. And he changed the order of the formula. He moved some parentheses in the formula. And somehow I ended up alive and well today. I'm a mathematical miracle. I defy the odds. I should be in the Guinness Book of World Records. I'll be in Ripley's Believe It or Not. Because if you take what I promised God and you subtract what I didn't do, and you multiply it by my sins, it should equal out to destruction. But then I gotta do more. Because if you take my sins and divide them by God's mercy, and you multiply them by the blood, it ends up in redemption. I say, I serve the mathematician. I serve the mathematician. Somebody lift up two hands and say, God, I thank you for my fun. God, I thank you for my fun. If you knew who my mama was, if you knew what my daddy did, if you knew about my family, if you knew who I was in school, it don't make no sense. I'm standing here today, and it's never gonna make any sense. God told me to tell somebody. He said, I got a plan for you that's perfectly preposterous. What God did in Judah was perfectly preposterous. He took a descendant of incest and created the Messiah. Y'all didn't hear me in this house. He took a descendant of incest and created the Redeemer. It was a plan, Rodney. It was perfectly preposterous. He had a plan for them. When they got to the crossroad, that was absolutely crazy. And I don't know about you in the house today. Oh, but I'm so glad that I serve a God that's got a plan for my life that nobody else can understand. Somebody say, we serve a God.
We serve a God.
Divinely absurd. people. He said, are you ready for something ridiculous? Are you ready for me to do something crazy? He said, do you trust me enough to let me do what I need to do in my life? He said, do you have enough faith to stick with me through the pain? Do you have enough faith to stick with me through the tears? God said, will you let me do something in your life that's absolutely illogical? Do I have any folks in here that'll say, God, I'm ready?
God, I'm ready
for something ridiculous? He said, where does your logic stop and your faith kick in? I said, where does your logic stop and your faith kick in? Don't give up on God chasing after the logical. Don't give up on God chasing after the normal. God said, I got something coming that's going to be so ridiculous nobody's going to trace it. Are you ready to drop your logic and give up the ridiculous? Can I ask one more question? Can you handle it? If God breaks the rules for you, can you be trusted? If God breaks the rules for you, will you stay committed? If God breaks the rules for you, I'm so glad that I serve the rule breaker. Because when he let me wake up this morning, he broke the rules for a sinner like me. When he let me open my eyes, he broke the rules for a sinner like me. When he let me get out of my bed, he broke the rules for a sinner like me. God said, can I trust you if I break the rules to do something ridiculous in your life? If you're in the house and you're struggling right now, if you're in the house and you're crying right now, if you're in the house and you're hurting right now, God's not trying to break you. He's breaking the rules for something in your future. I need to know, can you bless it when what's going on doesn't make any sense? Lift up your hands, open up your mouth, even if your current situation doesn't make sense. God said, will you bless me? While I work behind the scenes, will you bless me? While I put some stuff together, will you bless me? While I shift in a moment, can I trust you? When it don't make sense, somebody throw your hands up and say, God, I bless you. While you work, God, I bless you. While you move, God, I bless you. While you fix it, tell him thank you. Give him glory. Bless his name. While you're waiting, while he's working, while he's shifting, give him glory. Even though it doesn't make sense, God, I thank you for letting me cry. God, I thank you for letting me struggle. God, I thank you for pushing me harder, because I believe you got a plan for me. And it's going to end up absolutely ridiculous. Somebody say, God, oh God, God, oh God, I thank you for my formula. I thank you for my plan. I thank you for behind the scenes. I need some people. I need some people that are in a jacked up situation. I need some people that cry still blessing, even though it doesn't make sense. Come on, lift up your hands, open up your mouth. Now I need to hear you. I need to hear you. I bless you, God, in the midst of my formula. I bless you, God, in the midst of my pain. I bless you, God, even though I don't understand it. I bless you, God. I don't know what's going on. I bless you, God. I didn't think I'd be here. I bless you, God. I don't know how I'm gonna make it. This thing doesn't make no sense. Oh, but I still give you glory. I still magnify you. God told me to tell you, you might as well go on and bless me, because it's never going to make sense.
Woo, God.
But I don't know about you.
Yeah.
After all I've been through, after all I struggled through,
Yeah, God.
I can't wait to see what God has been working on for me. After the times I begged me, after the times I crawled out of me, after the times I was humiliated, I can't wait to see what God was working on for me. It ain't, I believe it ain't, I believe it ain't, I believe it ain't, don't make no natural born sense. Can y'all excuse me? Because I'm about to give God praise for my preposterous blessing. And I don't need you to bless him if you don't want to. But I believe that what's coming, I got to build up some praise for it. I believe that what's in the atmosphere, I need to begin to tap it on out. I got to bless God because I got something coming that I need to build up some praise for. I got something coming. I'm just believing. I'm just trusting. I'm just standing on the word of God. On Christ, the solid rock I stand. All on the ground is sinking sand. Somebody tell him thank you.
Thank you, God.
Somebody give him glory.
Yeah.
For what's coming. For what's coming. For what's coming. I know you can bless him for what you see. I know you can bless him for what you got. I know you can bless him for what you came through. But can you bless him for what's coming? If somebody asks you
Don't make sense.
It don't make
how you
sense.
made it, tell me I would explain it to you.
But it wouldn't make sense.
If somebody asks you how you got this far, you tell me I would explain it to you.
But it ain't gonna make no sense.
And they say, I used to know you. Can you explain to me how you are who you are today? You tell them I would try to take you through the process.
But it ain't gonna make no sense.
If you want to understand,
You preaching!
I would try to lay it out for you, but it ain't gonna make no sense. How I kept my house, how I kept my car, how I kept my mind, how I kept my job. I would tell you my story, but it ain't gonna make sense. I need some people that God has done some stuff that if you had to write a book, you wouldn't be able to write it. If you had to write a movie, nobody would be able to star in me because it wouldn't make no sense. After everything, if I told you my story, it would be crazy. You would think I was a lunatic. You would think it was a fairy tale. We have lives already. They don't make sense. It don't make sense. The fact that I'm here,
It don't make sense. Don't make no
the
sense.
fact that I didn't kill myself, it don't make no sense. The fact that I didn't give up, it don't make no sense. The fact that I'm alive and well, I'm getting ready to go. I'm getting ready to go. But if you saw me in 2015, leaving my home with nothing but my bed and my clothes, leaving my home with nothing but my baby, you would understand that where I am today makes no sense. You would understand that I'm in my right mind. Makes no sense. I lost everything. And now I got more than I ever had. My story, my story, my story. Look at your neighbor and say my story,
My story.
my story,
My story.
my story,
My story.
my story,
My story.
my story. And it's never. It's never.
Never gonna make sense.
Can I tell y'all this part? This is the crazy part. This is just this level. When we get to the next level, it's gonna be even crazy. It's gonna be even more ridiculous. Because the higher we go, the more the math gets off. The better we recover. The more whole we become. Makes no sense. The average bear would have buckled under your weight. Look at you.
Sure enough.
Look at you.
Yeah.
Look at you.
Yeah, God. Yeah. Yeah.
I might not look like the world wants me to look. But if you really knew
Thank you, God.
what I've been through,
Hallelujah. Thank you, God.
nobody knows your whole
Thank
story.
you, God. Hallelujah.
Nobody has all the
Thank you, God.
details. Because some of them are too shameful to tell. So don't look down on me right now. Thinking I'm unworthy. Thinking I shouldn't be here.
Thank
Thinking
you,
it's
God.
ridiculous that God brought me here. I know it don't make no sense, but if you be real man.
Yeah.
Me, my very existence. The enemy tried to destroy me. People tried to discredit me. And at the same time, God broke me.
Thank you,
He
God.
orchestrated it. Now, I tell you something real crazy, Sheila. Some of the stuff that your enemy did to you, God told him to do it. That's rough, ain't it? It was part of the plan. He just knew they were useful. He knew they were capable of it. Do this. Break them. Do this. I need them strong. Go ahead. Set your sights. Take aim and fire. Because I got something planned later. That they got to take this hit for. Scarred skin is tougher than fresh skin. So sometimes, freedom, God has wounded us in order to take us higher because it will be greater attacks. And God would not have us move to a place that we're not prepared for. Sometimes preparation is painful. So my message for you today is don't sit in here thinking that everything that you went through and everything that you're going through was a trick of the devil. Maybe. Maybe not. Think of it. When you think of it now, think of it and say, what could God have been trying to show me? Do you know what God taught me in my lowest moments, Neil? That I really didn't need everything that I thought I needed. And that I could survive with nothing but Him. Because He needed me to know when I got to this place and I had a little something, that it wouldn't become my God.
Yeah.
So He had to first teach me how important He is at the level of nothing, so that He could trust me with something. Will you whisper to your neighbor real quietly and say, maybe it's God?
Maybe it's God. Thank you, God.
What you going through right now? Maybe it's God. That's hard, but it's the word. Maybe it's God. But I can prophesy this over your life. That whatever is going on right now is a part of His plan for you. If you just trust Him. Stop fighting against the plan and yield to God's will. And the old church say, by and by, He'll reveal it. It's never going to make sense. What you had to go through until it's all said and we meet Jesus, it's never going to make sense. Why you lost them, it's never going to make sense. Don't try to make it make sense in your mind. It's not going to make sense. Just yield to the plan. Yield to God's will. He'll reveal all in time. But we've got to trust Him. We've got to understand that He is sovereign. And I hate to talk so hard, but let me tell you, God is not swayed by our emotional response. He is led by the greater good for our lives. Yeah, God hates my tears, but don't think he won't use them. He needs you strong. He needs you ready. He needs you broken and yielded. And until we get to that place, he's going to keep on working the plan. God is going to get out of you what he needs to get out of you. He's going to get out of me what he needs to get out of me. And guess what? I want to be like Ruth. I want to just go forward and say, you know what? You're my God. I go where you lead. I see what happens. I'm not going back to what I know just because it's familiar and because it makes sense. I'm going to go where God leads. The doors of the church are open. If there's someone here in the house today who says, you know what? I need to yield. I need to let this thing overtake me. I need to be fully committed to my relationship with Christ. Yeah. If you're here, come. The second appeal is if there's someone here that's been in relationship with God and got to the crossroad, went back. Come. The third appeal is there's someone here today that says, you know what? I need to go with a group of people. I need to get me a little squad like Ruth and Naomi that says, these people